Close your eyes and imagine. It's December 1887, and you're standing in a farmhouse kitchen. On the table sits a pie, dark, dense, fragrant with spices. Cut into it, and what spills out isn't just fruit, it's meat. Actual meat, preserved in sugar and spices, mixed with apples and raisins, soaked in brandy, aged for weeks in the cellar. This is mincemeat pie. And if that sounds strange, if the idea of meat in Christmas dessert makes you uncomfortably tense, because somewhere between then and now, we forgot what this pie actually was. We forgot why it existed. We forgot that it wasn't just a holiday treat, it was survival, wrapped in symbolism, baked into tradition. Mincemeat pie is one of the most misunderstood foods in American history. Today, if you can even find it, it's a jarred mixture of dried fruit, no meat at all. But for centuries, real mincemeat pie was as essential to Christmas as the tree itself. If you've ever wondered what our ancestors really ate, not the romanticized version, but the real, strange, and ingenious food that kept them alive, click the like button and continue reading. It was born of necessity, a way to preserve meat before refrigeration, a way to transform scarcity into abundance, survival into celebration. And it carried meanings we've lost: religious symbolism, cultural identity, the understanding that food is never just food. It's memory, connection, the taste of who we were. The story begins in medieval England. Crusaders returning from the Holy Land brought spices: cinnamon, cloves, nutmeg. These weren't just flavoring, they preserved food. They signified wealth. They connected eating to pilgrimage, to the three gifts of the Magi, to Christ's birth itself. Medieval cooks combined these spices with chopped meat, dried fruits, suet, and alcohol. The mixture was packed into crocks and stored. The alcohol and sugar preserved it. The fat sealed out air. The spices masked off flavors and killed bacteria. It wasn't pretty, but it worked. By the time English settlers reached America, mincemeat was already a Christmas tradition. But in the New World, it became something more: survival itself. Because here, winters were brutal and refrigeration didn't exist. You butchered animals in late fall, and you had to make that meat last until spring. American mincemeat evolved. It became less about exotic spices and more about what you had. Apples, abundant in fall. Molasses, cheaper than sugar. Cider, instead of brandy. And meat whatever you could spare. Beef tongue, heart, neck meat. The tough cuts, nothing wasted. The process was labor-intensive and communal. Women gathered in November, after the first frost. Meat was boiled until tender, then chopped fine. Apples peeled and chopped. Suet rendered. Raisins picked over. Spices measured like treasure because they were treasure. Everything went into a massive crock, mixed by hand, sealed, left to cure in the cellar for weeks, sometimes months. The flavors melding, the alcohol penetrating the meat, transforming it. And the smell of unsealed, that crock emanated something dark, sweet, and spiced. Something that said, Christmas is coming. Winter can be survived. We will feast. When December arrived, the crock was opened. The mincemeat, now thick and glossy, was spooned into pie shells and baked. The pies became the centerpiece of Christmas dinner and insurance for the months ahead. Because mincemeat pie didn't just taste like Christmas, it tasted like February, when the cellar was nearly empty. It tasted like March, when the last salt pork was gone. It tasted like survival. But there's more. Mincemeat pie wasn't just practical, it was sacred. The rectangular shape represented the manger. The spices represented the gifts of the Magi. The meat represented Christ's sacrifice. Eating it on Christmas was communion, participation in the story. Subscribe to Ancient Memories of America if you want to discover the forgotten foods that shaped our ancestors' lives. Puritans banned it a Catholic, they said. But traditions are stubborn, and survival doesn't care about theology. Mincemeat endured. So here's the question: how did we go from that, from a food that was essential, symbolic, communal, to the jarred, meatless thing we have now? How did it become a joke? The answer takes us through industrialization, changing tastes, and the sanitization of food. But first, we need to understand what it actually was. We need to taste it not with our mouths, but with our imaginations. This is Forgotten Foods. This is mincemeat pie. And this is how America used to eat Christmas. Making mincemeat wasn't a recipe, it was a ritual. A multi-day process requiring planning, labor, and culinary faith belief that if you did everything right, what emerged weeks later would be extraordinary. It started with butchering. Late November, early December, after the first hard freeze. That's when animals were slaughtered. The timing was critical. Too early and meat might spoil. Too late and you risked a thaw. Butchering was communal. Neighbors helped. Everyone got a share. Nothing was wasted. The best cuts were saved for smoking and curing. But there were always tough cuts left, organ meats, bits that wouldn't keep well. That's where mincemeat came in. Beef heart, tongue, neck meat. These weren't scraps, they were valuable, full of flavor, but they required transformation. The meat was boiled for hours in a massive pot until so tender it fell apart. You tended it constantly, skimmed foam, kept the fire steady. When done, you pulled it out, let it cool, and began the exhausting work of chopping it by hand fine enough that pieces disappeared into the mixture, but not paste. While you chopped, others prepared the rest. Apples, bushels of them, late-season tart varieties. Peeling was children's work. Hours of it, core saved for vinegar, peels for the pigs, the flesh chopped into small pieces. Suet, beef, suet, the hard fat from around kidneys. Essential, it melted slowly, coating everything, preserving, adding richness. It had to be rendered first, melted gently until fat separated from tissue. The rendered suet was golden, almost translucent, smelling faintly sweet. Comment below if anyone in your family still makes real mincemeat pie, or if you've ever tasted it. Your memories keep this tradition alive. Then dried fruit, dark, sticky raisins, currants, citron if you could afford it, most couldn't. The fruit was picked over carefully, stems removed, chopped if needed. Spices were measured like treasure because they were. A tin of cinnamon cost more than a day's wages. They were toasted first to wake their oils, then ground fresh by hand. The smell was intoxicating, warm, complex, alive. Sweetener came next. Sugar, if you had money. Molasses, if you were poor, which most were. Molasses was thick, dark, almost bitter, but it worked dissolving into the mixture, binding everything. And alcohol, non-negotiable. Brandy was traditional. Apple brandy, more common in America, cheaper, locally made. The alcohol killed bacteria, prevented spoilage, mellowed flavors as it aged. Everything went into the crock. Chopped meat, apples, suet, raisins, spices, molasses, alcohol. Then you mixed by hand, plunging your arms in, feeling cold fat and sticky fruit and fragrant spices, mixing until evenly distributed. Your hands smelled like cinnamon and beef and brandy for days. The crock was sealed, sometimes with cloth, sometimes with a wooden lid, sometimes with melted suet poured over the top for an airtight seal. Then into the cold cellar it went, and it sat for weeks, sometimes months. What happened in that crock was transformation. Alcohol penetrated meat, breaking down fibers. Sugar drew out moisture, concentrating taste. Spices released oils, and slowly, impossibly, those disparate ingredients became one thing: mincemeat. When opened, the smell hit you first. Sweet and savory, spiced and boozy, dark and complex. Nothing else smelled like that. You'd tasted just a tiny bit and adjust. More cinnamon, another splash of brandy. Then came baking. Pie dough rolled, thin lard, based flaky, sturdy. Mincemeat spooned, ingenuously mounded high. Top crust crimped, vented for steam, sometimes decorated with pastry stars or leaves. Into the wood-fired of temperamental, requiring constant attention. The smell of mincemeat pie baking is impossible to describe if you've never experienced it. Not sweet like apple pie, not savory like pot pie, both and neither. Spices caramelizing, meat, juices mingling with fruit, sugars, butter, browning, brandy evaporating. A smell that filled the house, seeped into everything. When it came out, crust golden, filling bubbling darkly, it had to cool. Torture for children. But rushing meant burning your mouth on molten filling that stuck like napalm. But when ready, when you finally cut into it, that first bite was revelation. Crust shattered, filling dense, dark, complex, sweet but not cloying, savory but not obviously meaty. The fruit had softened, nearly dissolved, meat tender, almost imperceptible, spices everywhere and nowhere, and the richness had coated your mouth, satisfied something primal. This wasn't dessert, it was sustenance. One slice was a meal, dense with calories, protein, fat. It stuck to your ribs, kept you warm, fueled hard work in freezing temperatures, and it tasted like celebration and survival intertwined. Mincemeat pie was never just food. From its earliest days, it carried meanings beyond taste or nutrition. It was theology you could eat, history you could hold, faith made tangible. The religious symbolism was explicit. The rectangular shape of traditional pies, long and narrow, represented the manger where Christ was born. The top crust was sometimes decorated with a star for Bethlehem. The filling itself represented the gifts of the Magi: gold, the color of baked crust; frankincense, aromatic spices; and myrrh, the bitterness of preservation. The reality of sacrifice. And the meat, the actual minced meat, represented Christ's flesh. The sacrifice, the incarnation, the understanding that the divine had taken physical form. Eating mincemeat pie on Christmas was a kind of communion, a way of participating in the story, a reminder that the sacred wasn't separate from the everyday. This wasn't subtle. It was conscious, deliberate. Medieval and early modern Christians understood food as more than fuel. Every meal was opportunity for spiritual reflection. What you ate, when you ate it, how it was prepared, all of this mattered. All had meaning. That's why Puritans banned it. Not because it was unhealthy or strange, but because they saw it as too Catholic, too sacramental. The idea that food could carry religious meaning outside formal communion was dangerous to Puritan theology, so they outlawed it. But the ban didn't last. Traditions are resilient, and mincemeat pie was too useful, too delicious, too embedded in culture to disappear. It survived, evolved. In America, religious symbolism became background, less explicit, but the sense that it was special, more than just food, remained. Families had their own traditions. The recipe passed mother to daughter, written in faded ink or kept in memory. The timing always made in November, always served at Christmas. The rituals, tasting the first batch, letting children stir for good luck, saving the best pie for New Year's. There was magic in it, kitchen magic that connects generations. When you made mincemeat using your grandmother's recipe, you were doing exactly what she had done. Same spices, same proportions, maybe the same wooden spoon. And when you tasted it, you tasted her kitchen, her hands, her voice. You were connected across time by flavor. This is culinary memory, the way taste and smell trigger memory more powerfully than almost anything else. A specific flavor can transport you instantly to childhood, to a specific moment. Mincemeat pie, for families who made it, was packed with that memory, dense with it. Every bite was layered with Christmases past, with people gone, with a world that existed only in that taste. If this is making you see Christmas food differently, share this video, help us preserve these stories. But mincemeat wasn't just about looking backward, it was survival in the present. Without refrigeration, without stores, without the ability to buy fresh meat in February, preserved foods were life or death. Mincemeat was one of the most efficient preservation methods available. It packed enormous nutrition into small space. It lasted months, and it was delicious, which mattered, because eating salt pork and dried beans for 4 months was so. Think about what that meant psychologically. Winter in the 19th century was brutal, cold, dark, isolating. People trapped indoors for weeks. Depression was common, what we'd now call seasonal affective disorder. Having something delicious, something special stored in the pantry was more than practical. It was mental health, hope in physical form, and it was communal. Making mincemeat was too big for one person. Neighbors came together. Women worked side by side, chopping, mixing, sharing recipes, sharing gossip, sharing labor. In a world where you might not see anyone outside your family for weeks, these moments were essential. They held communities together. Sharing pies reinforced bonds. You made extra, gave them away. 2 neighbors who'd helped with harvest. To the widow who couldn't butcher her own pig. To the new family without supplies. Giving food wasn't charity, was investment in community. It was saying, we take care of each other. We survive together. There was also competition. Whose mincemeat was best? Whose crust flakiest? Women took pride in their mincemeat. It was craft, art, one of few areas where women had complete control, where their skill was publicly recognized. A woman known for excellent mincemeat had status, respect, and simply, mincemeat pie tasted good, not despite the meat, but because of it. The meat added umami, savory depth that makes food satisfying in ways pure sweetness never can. The combination of meat and fruit wasn't weird to people then. It was normal, delicious, right? Our modern palates separate sweet and savory. Dessert is sweet, meat is savory. Never shall they meet. But this is recent. For most of history, most cultures combined them. Duck with cherry sauce, pork with apples. The sweetness balanced the fat. It worked. Mincemeat was that tradition at its peak. The meat was the foundation. The fruit provided brightness. Spices provided complexity. Together, it was alchemy. But alchemy requires belief, cultural context, being raised where mincemeat pie is normal, expected, beloved, and that world was ending. The death of real mincemeat pie didn't happen all at once. It was slow, generational, a fading that took decades, driven by forces both technological and cultural. The first blow was refrigeration, not home refrigerators. Those didn't become common until the 1920s and 30s, but industrial refrigeration, railroad cars transporting fresh meat year-round, iceboxes in homes. Suddenly, the desperate need to preserve meat through winter was less desperate. You could buy fresh meat in February. The necessity of mincemeat eroded. When something stops being necessary, it becomes optional. And when optional, people start asking, do I really want to spend 2 days making this? Do I really want meat in my pie? The second blow was industrialization of food. By the late 1800s, companies were canning and jarring everything. You could buy prepared mincemeat in a jar. Just open, pour, bake. No butchering, no chopping, no waiting. Convenient, easy, modern. But commercial mincemeat wasn't like homemade. Meat spoiled too easily, even with preservatives. It was expensive to produce, and consumers were increasingly squeamish. So manufacturers reduced the meat, added more fruit, more filler, more corn syrup. By the early 1900s, many commercial products contained only token amounts of meat, maybe 10%, maybe less. Some had none at all. They were labeled meatless mincemeat or mock mincemeat, and companies marketed this as progress, as improvement. Who wanted meat in dessert anyway? This was cleaner, more refined, more civilized. The third blow was cultural shift. As America urbanized, as people moved from farms to cities, butchering knowledge was lost. City dwellers bought meat from butchers, pre-cut, sanitized, disconnected from the animal. The idea of using organ meats became distasteful. Poor people's food, ethnic food, not respectable middle-class fare. American foodways became standardized, commercialized, regional variations erased, and American culture, especially after World War I, was aggressively future-oriented, modern, clean, efficient. Old food traditions were baggage. World Wars I and II accelerated this. Food rationing meant meat was scarce and precious. Using meat in pie, mixing it with fruit and sugar, seemed wasteful, even unpatriotic. Victory mincemeat recipes circulated using only fruit, and after the wars, those recipes stuck. Why go back to the complicated way when the new way worked fine? Tastes were changing too. Late 19th and early 20th centuries saw dramatic shifts towards sweeter, lighter, fruitier desserts. Layer cakes with buttercream, jello salads, ice cream. These were modern mincemeat. Pie dark, dense, complex, challenging started seeming heavy, old, grandma food, and grandmas kept making it. Through all of this, there were still women, mostly older, who made real mincemeat pie, who used their mother's recipes, who served it at Christmas because that's what you did. But their children didn't always learn. The daughters and granddaughters were busy. They had jobs outside the home, access to store-bought everything. Making mincemeat from scratch took 2 days. Why bother when you could buy a jar? And the jarred stuff wasn't the same, but it was close enough, or so they told themselves. Hit subscribe so you never miss these forgotten food stories. We're preserving what's being lost. By the 1950s and 60s, real mincemeat pie with actual meat was rare. It existed in pockets, rural areas, traditional families, places where old ways still held. But mainstream American culture had moved on. Mincemeat became a joke, the butt of sitcom humor, the thing nobody wanted at the Christmas table. And the final blow was loss of taste memory. Once a generation grew up never tasting real mincemeat pie, the flavor became alien, unimaginable. The very idea meat in dessert seemed wrong, disgusting. And without that taste memory, without grandmothers to say, trust me, it's good, the tradition had nowhere to go. By the 1980s and 90s, mincemeat pie was functionally dead in America. You could still buy jarred filling fruit-based, no meat, cloyingly sweet. A few specialty companies made traditional versions with tiny amounts of beef. But real mincemeat pie was gone, extinct, remembered only in old cookbooks and fading memories. What died with it wasn't just a recipe, it was a worldview. The understanding that food could be both sweet and savory. That preservation was an art. That meat was too valuable to waste. That Christmas dinner in December could save your life in March. That making food was multi-day. communal work connecting you to neighbors and ancestors. That dessert didn't have to be frivolous, could be sustenance. We gained things, of course. Convenience, food safety. Refrigeration is a genuine miracle. Store-bought food freed women from endless kitchen labor. These are real gains, but losses are real too. And the loss of mincemeat pitha, real thing, is worth mourning, because it represented a relationship with food we've almost entirely forgotten. One where food was never wasted, where every part of the animal was honored, where sweets weren't empty calories but essential fuel. Can it come back? Should it? Is there room in modern America for a food requiring deboning, chopping, aging, and willingness to eat meat in pie? The answer may surprise you. Here's what most people don't know. Real mincemeat pie never completely died. It went underground. It survived in small pockets, rural communities, traditional families, historical reenactors, food historians, people who refused to let it disappear. In Appalachia, in parts of rural New England, in isolated farming communities, there were still grandmothers making real mincemeat in the 1980s and 90s, using their grandmother's recipes, butchering beef heart or venison, chopping it fine, mixing with apples and suet and spices, aging it in crocks, baking it at Christmas, teaching grandchildren willing to learn. These weren't conscious acts of preservation, just making what they'd always made, keeping faith with tradition. And in Living History Museum's Colonial Williamsburg, Old Sturbridge Village historical interpreters were making mincemeat pie as part of demonstrating 18th and 19th century food ways. They researched original recipes, sourced authentic ingredients. These efforts were educational, not culinary. But documentation is the first step to revival. Then came the food revolution of the late 1990s and 2000s, the farm-to-table movement, the locavore movement, renewed interest in traditional foodways, in artisanal production, in foods made the way they used to be. Chefs started exploring historical American cuisine, bloggers dug up old recipes, and mincemeat pie kept appearing. Weird, challenging, forgotten, fascinating. Some chefs started experimenting. What if we made real mincemeat pie? Would modern diners accept it? The answer, shockingly, was sometimes yes. Not everyone, not even most, but enough. Enough that a few high-end restaurants started offering it as a seasonal special. Enough that food magazines started writing the lost Christmas tradition making a comeback. Food historians played a crucial role. Scholars researched and published traditional recipes. They contextualized mincemeat pie, explained why it existed, what it meant, how to make it properly, and they argued convincingly that forgetting these foods meant forgetting part of American history, that culinary heritage was worth preserving like architectural heritage or folk music. The internet helped too. Suddenly, if you wanted to make real mincemeat pie, you could find recipes, detailed ones, with historical context, with substitutions, with encouragement from others trying the same thing. Online communities formed, people sharing successes and failures, posting photos, comparing techniques, and something interesting happened. The people making real mincemeat weren't just history nerds, they were hunters, modern hunters making venison mincemeat from deer they'd killed themselves. Nothing wasted. Tenderloins for steaks, tough neck meat for mincemeat. It made perfect sense. Mincemeat had always been a way to use every part of the animal. That ethic resonated with hunters believing in ethical, sustainable meat consumption. It resonated with whole animal butchers too. Butchers pushing back against industrialized meat, who wanted to buy whole animals from local farms, who believed customers should eat more than just chicken breasts and ribeyes. Mincemeat pie was perfect for less popular cuts. Heart, tongue, cheek meat. These cuts were nutritious, flavorful, and cheap. Homesteaders got interested, people trying to live self-sufficiently, raising their own animals, preserving their own food. Mincemeat was exactly the skill they needed. Multi-purpose, long-lasting, delicious, connected to the homesteading ethos, nothing wasted, everything used, traditional skills valued. If you're inspired to try making real mincemeat pie, or if you know someone who still does, tell us in the comments. These stories matter. Even mainstream food writers started advocating for mincemeat's return, not as nostalgia, not as historical curiosity, but as a legitimate, delicious food deserving reconsideration. They argued that knee-jerk revulsion to meat in desert was cultural conditioning, not inherent taste. That if you grew up in food cultures where sweet and savory mixed freely, Chinese cuisine, Middle Eastern cuisine, mincemeat made perfect sense. And they pointed out that mincemeat pie wasn't even weird in American historical context. We'd eaten it for centuries. It was as American as apple pie, more American, maybe, because apple pie came from Europe unchanged, while mincemeat evolved specifically to suit American ingredients and needs. Rejecting it meant rejecting part of our own culinary heritage. Did this mean mincemeat pie became popular again? No, not even close. Most Americans still have never tasted real mincemeat. Most never will. The jarred fruit-based version still outsells the real thing by orders of magnitude, and even that sells poorly. But the revival, small as it is, matters, because it represents a different way of thinking about food and tradition, not as museum pieces preserved under glass, but as living practices that can adapt, evolve, serve new purposes while staying rooted in old wisdom. The homesteader making venison mincemeat isn't recreating 1887. She's using an 1887 technique to solve a 2024 problem: what to do with tough bits of deer in her freezer. The chef serving mincemeat at his Farm Tootie Bowl restaurant isn't being nostalgic. He's introducing diners to a flavor profile they've never experienced. And the grandmother teaching her granddaughter to make real mincemeat using great-great-grandmother's recipe, but substituting dried cranberries for unavailable currants, using local honey instead of molasses, keeping something alive, adapting it, making it relevant, ensuring knowledge doesn't die with her. This is what food revival looks like. Not return to some imaginary perfect past, but reaching back to grab something valuable almost lost and pulling it forward into the present, changed but recognizable. Adapted but authentic. Close your eyes one last time. Come back with me to that kitchen in 1887. The woman standing at the table, arms deep in a crock, mixing meat and fruit and spices. Her hands are cold. The work is hard. Outside, winter is coming. She's not thinking about history or tradition. She's thinking about February, about March, about the weeks when salt pork runs low and potatoes sprout and everyone is tired of winter. She's thinking, this will feed us, this will keep us, this will remind us, in the dead of winter, that we prepared, that we cared enough to do hard work now, so we'd have abundance later. She's also thinking about her mother, about learning this recipe in this same kitchen, standing on a stool to reach the table, about her mother's hands guiding hers, about the smell of cinnamon and brandy, about how her mother said, pay attention, this is important, someday you'll make this for your children, and she did, she is, and when her daughter currently peeling apples at the smaller table is grown, she'll teach her daughter, and the recipe will continue, the same spices, the same proportions, unbroken, continuous, a thread connecting generations. But let's imagine, that daughter grows up, has children, lives in town now, in a city, has a job, buys meat from a butcher, already cut, has a refrigerator. Making mincemeat from scratch takes 2 days she doesn't have, so she buys a jar. Just this year, just to see if it's close enough. It's not, but it's easier, and easier wins. So next year she buys the jar again, and the year after. Eventually, her children don't know there was ever any other way. They eat mincemeat pie at Christmas because grandma did, but they don't understand why. It's just one more obligatory holiday food, tolerated rather than treasured. And the thread breaks. This happened in millions of American families. The knowledge lost, the taste forgotten, the tradition reduced to a jar nobody really wants, and something precious disappeared. Not just a recipe, but a whole way of understanding food. Food as connection, food as survival, food as memory made edible. But here's what that woman in 1887 couldn't know, that 137 years later, people would be trying to bring it back, that food historians would study her recipe, that chefs would serve it in restaurants, that homesteaders would make it in kitchens animated by the same spirit. Nothing wasted, everything honored. She couldn't know that her mincemeat pie would become a symbol of resilience, of ingenuity, of a time when people knew how to survive, when food was serious business, when Christmas wasn't about consumption but about preparation, and she couldn't know that tasting her pie or something close to it would become a radical act, a way of saying, I refuse to forget. I refuse to accept that convenience equals progress. I refuse to believe the old ways have nothing to teach us. Because here's the truth. Mincemeat pie is strange. It's challenging. It's a lot of work. Most people who try it for the first time don't love it immediately. The flavor is too complex, too far from the simple, sweet desserts we're used to. But if you give it a chance, if you taste it knowing what it is, why it exists, what it meant, something shifts. The meat doesn't taste weird. It tastes right. Grounding, The sweetness isn't cloying because it's balanced by savory depth. The spices aren't overwhelming, they're warming, exactly what you want on a cold day. And the richness, the way one slice fills you completely, that's the whole point. And if you're really lucky, if you taste real mincemeat pie, made by someone who learned from someone stretching back generations, you taste more than flavor. You taste continuity. You taste the hands that made it, the kitchens where it was mixed, the Christmases where it was served, the Februaries where it was salvation. You taste memory, and memory becomes instruction. It teaches you things you didn't know you needed to learn. Mincemeat pie teaches that food doesn't have to be simple to be good, that challenging flavors are often most rewarding, that preservation is art worth learning, that honoring the whole animal is both ethical and practical, that Christmas can be about preparing, not just celebrating, that sweetness and savory aren't enemies, they're partners. If this moved you, if you're now curious about mincemeat pie, or you have memories of a grandmother who made it, or you're inspired to try making it yourself, share this, comment below, tell us your stories. Every voice that remembers keeps these flavors alive. This is the America we remember, the America that wasted nothing, that honored tradition, that understood the best foods are often the ones that challenge us, that connect us, that refuse to be forgotten. That woman in 1887, mixing mincemeat in her cold kitchen, she'd be amazed we're still talking about her pie, that we're trying to recreate it, that we care enough to spend hours researching it, writing about it, making it ourselves. But maybe she wouldn't be that surprised, because she knew something we're only beginning to remember, that food is never just food. It's story, it's connection, it's survival, it's love made tangible. And some things, the important things, are worth keeping, no matter how much work they take. So this Christmas, or next, or whenever you're ready, learn about mincemeat pie, the real kind. Taste it if you get the chance, not because it's easy, but because it's hard. Because hard things are often most worthwhile. Because every bite of real mincemeat pie is an act of remembering, and because somewhere, in a kitchen that now exists only in memory, a woman is mixing meat, fruits, and spices, preparing for winter, making something that will endure, something that tastes of survival and celebration at the same time. The thread hasn't broken, it's thin, it's worn, but it's holding on. This is Forgotten Foods, from ancient memories of America, keeping the flavor of the past alive. This was another episode of Forgotten Foods, from ancient memories of America. Thank you for savoring this story with me. Thank you for being willing to imagine meat in your Christmas pie. Thank you for caring enough about the past to learn from it. If this moved you, if you're now curious about ground beef pie, or if you have memories of a grandmother making it, or if you've been inspired to try making it yourself, share it. Comment below. Tell us your stories. Every voice that remembers keeps these flavors alive. This is the America we remember. America that wasted nothing, that honored tradition, that understood that the best foods are often those that challenge us, that connect us, that refuse to be forgotten. Subscribe so you don't miss a single episode of the special December series. We'll see you in the next episode of the special Christmas series. Until the next video, Merry Christmas, and may your table always hold the memories worth preserving. See you then.